Well, welcome back MMA fans. We know it's been a long time since our last video, but we're back now and the videos will be coming out on a consistent basis. What better way to make our return than to talk about the upcoming mega fight between Khamzat Chimaev and Nate Diaz. This is a fight made for the fans, two of the UFC's biggest stars and fan favorites clashing in the main event for UFC 279. First, let's start with the tail of the tape. Khamzat Chimaev stands at 6 foot 2 inches tall with a reach of 75 inches and a finish rate of 91%. Nate Diaz comes in at an even 6 foot tall with a reach of 76 inches and a finish rate of 80%. We're going to start this breakdown by letting you know what you've already seen and read by now. This fight is not a fair fight. Khamzat Chimaev is the UFC's top up-and-coming prospect who's exploded onto the scene in a way few have done before. Nate Diaz is a bona fide legend of the sport, but is fighting out the last fight on his UFC contract near the tail end of his career. But as we all know, this is MMA, where anything can happen. So without further ado, let's take a closer look at our competitors. Let's take a look at both of these welterweights and their striking, beginning with Chimaev. Khamzat is entering into the prime of his career. He excels at every aspect of MMA and his striking is no exception. He has an astounding significant strikes landed per minute of 7.89, striking accuracy of 59%, strikes absorbed per minute of 4.3, and a striking defense of 41%. Most of these stats come from his Fight of the Year candidate with Gilbert Burns, as his previous 4 UFC fights resulted in him outlanding his opponents 112-1. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Chimaev's first 4 UFC fights saw him demolish his opponents in historic fashion, as 3 of them were unable to land a single strike on the Swedish superstar. An orthodox fighter, Khamzat is the perfect combination of power and skill. His excellent grappling skills allow him to be more aggressive on the feet, as the threat of the takedown is always there. In his UFC debut, Khamzat immediately started his fight off with a massive head kick and immediately shot for his takedown, putting his future UFC opponents on notice. Coming into this fight with Diaz, expect to see a similar game plan as Khamzat deployed against Gilbert Burns. As a tall welterweight, Khamzat likes to fight behind his jab and kicks down the middle to keep his opponents at bay. This is until he sees an opening for a takedown or a vicious cross and uppercut. Chimaev constantly keeps the forward pressure on his opponents, backing them up against the cage. That's when Khamzat will let his hands go and goes for his 4 to 5 punch combos to try and put the lights out. Early in his career, his striking was wild and inconsistent, then he relied more on his grappling. But since his start in the UFC and training stint in Tiger Muay Thai, he has sharpened up his skills. One of Khamzat's best strikes is his rear hand uppercut. He likes to set up this uppercut and cross from feinting takedowns, which he gets his opponents flinching and dropping their hands. Although infamous for his grappling prowess, Khamzat has a strong understanding of footwork, constantly moving and cutting off his opponent's escape routes. As he did in his pre-UFC fights against Burns, Khamzat will force the uppercut as it's one of his most powerful strikes that can put the lights out on any fighter. Although Nate has been around a long time, he's still no slouch when it comes to his striking. Remember, this is the man that shocked the world by rocking and tapping out Conor McGregor and managed to rock Leon Edwards after a 5-round fight. Nate sports a significant strikes landed per minute of 4.51, striking accuracy of 45%, strikes absorbed per minute of 3.73, and a striking defense of 52%. Nate has always been a fighter to take one to give one. His iron chin has been one of his staples that has made him into one of MMA's biggest stars. Nate doesn't possess the power advantage in this fight, but what Nate lacks in power he makes up for in his cardio, strike output, and fight IQ. With an opponent as aggressive as Chimaev, look for Nate to employ a similar plan as we saw against his fights against McGregor and Michael Johnson. Since his reach is virtually identical to Chimaev, Nate will look to use his jab as a feint to draw his opponent in, quickly fade back before landing a quick lead hook. Diaz fights as a southpaw and in true southpaw fashion employs a good left body kick to the liver. He also uses his reach and long stance to be able to reach deceptively far in his jab cross combo when his opponents think he's out of range. This gives his opponents a false sense of security, as we saw against McGregor and Edwards. In Chimaev's fight against Burns, although a great performance, questions are raised about his ability to maintain his pace for a drawn out fight, and he is becoming visibly drained by the end of the 3rd round. With this fight being a 5-round main event, if the fight drags into the championship rounds, it could play to Nate's advantage, as he has endless cardio and continues to push the pace through the full 25 minutes. Next, let's take a look at the grappling skills of both these men, starting with Khamzat. In the time we've been able to watch Khamzat in the cage, we've seen his clear dominance when it comes to grappling. He's a 2-division Swedish national freestyle wrestling champion and a European combat sambo champion, so it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Khamzat sports a takedown average of 3.23, takedown accuracy of 66%, takedown defense of 100%, and a submission average of 2.7. With his striking being a major threat at any given point, Khamzat allows himself the opportunity to land a plethora of takedowns such as a single leg and double leg timed off his jabs or his opponent's strikes. He also likes to employ the outside leg trip with double underhooks. Being a pressure fighter, Chimaev performs most of his offensive wrestling against the cage. By pinning his opponents to the fence, it allows Khamzat to trap his opponents and land a flurry of punches. If his opponents try to get up, Khamzat is able to quickly change the angle and drag his opponents down with his weight and the employment of the Dagestani handcuff, figure fours, and other sambo control staples. Another aspect of his ground game that allows him to unload or set up his submissions is his ability to trap his opponent's legs when he has their back. By isolating his opponent's leg, Chimaev takes away the chance for his opponents to change position, while Khamzat maintains his dominant position. The relentless ground and pound eventually opens up the opponents to a mistake, in which he can capitalize with his arsenal of submissions. The relentlessness of his strikes and position changes leaves no room for his opponents to react and allows Chimaev to impose his will on the ground. Next, let's take a look at Nate Diaz and his extraordinary grappling repertoire. We have been blessed to watch the Diaz brothers jiu-jitsu for over 20 years, and Nate has been dominant on the ground from the day he's entered the octagon, owning some of the most iconic submissions in UFC history. Diaz sports a takedown average of 1.1, takedown accuracy of 30%, takedown defense of 41%, and a submission average of 1.3. Diaz is not one to enforce the wrestling in his fights. Very rarely in his UFC tenure has he landed more takedowns than his opponents. It's only ever happened 8 times in his 31-fight UFC career. But the problems his opponents run into is the brilliant jiu-jitsu that Diaz is able to use regardless of his position. He has no problem fighting off his back and in guard. No fight truly highlights the skills of Nate Diaz like his fight against Takanori Gomi. Nate has been able to thrive in the UFC due to his ability to fight off the back, whether it be on his back or on his way to the mat. If a fighter overcommits to the takedown, Nate is quick to grab any submission he can. In his fight against Pellegrino, while being taken down, Nate was able to climb his way up to the body and throw up one of the rudest triangle chokes we've ever seen in the UFC. Against a dominant top position grappler like Chimaev, a strong bottom game can serve as a saving grace for Diaz and may make Chimaev a little more tentative in his approach. Now, how do these two match up against one another? Look, there's a saying that gets tossed around in fights like these: out with the old and in with the new. With the current state of Nate and the UFC and the meteoric rise of Chimaev, it's no secret that the UFC is trying to feed Diaz to the wolf to generate more hype. This fight can go any which way Chimaev chooses, and we expect Chimaev to come out and make a statement. Chimaev will start this fight off by hunting Diaz down with his forward pressure and trying to trap Diaz up against the cage. But Nate Diaz is a megastar for a reason. That man never quits, and has pulled off great upsets in the past. If Diaz takes one from Chimaev, expect to see Nate throw 2 back. We expect to see Diaz lure Khamzat into a grappling match, because if Diaz has any chance to steal the hype from this train, it will be on the ground. If this fight does go to the ground, it'll be because Chimaev initiates the takedown. At the end of the day, this is the fight game. The sport where Matt Serra's and Juliana Peña's can shock the world, and we'd be fools to ever write off a fighter like Nate Diaz. But if all goes to Boris's plan, we will see a new megastar in the making after UFC 279. How do you think this fight plays out? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching our video. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.